whippoorwill call is just a reminder pretty girls have hearts made of stone.
That's true, by the way.
The garden home is gone.
So today we're looking at Tony Rice's guitar break on Cora is Gone from Bluegrass Album Band Volume 4. And there's a lot going on in this solo. First things first, they're in the key of D. Tony's capo 2 playing out of the C position. I'll explain why here in just a second, or how I know that here in just a second, and why that was cause for a lot of anxiety for a minute. But the most notable thing, I guess, about this solo, comparing it to solos past, is this one's in 3/4, which is different. I feel like as bluegrassers, we get a very steady diet of 4/4 or common time. That isn't to say that waltz time or 3/4 time doesn't make its way into the bluegrass repertoire, but it definitely is not as prominent as its 4/4 counterpart. Okay, and I feel like, you know, when we get used to soloing in 4/4 and improvising there too, when you change the parameters and you change the rules a little bit and shift it into 3/4, then all of a sudden we kind of have to almost relearn how to improvise in that time signature. At least I do. I don't want to speak for everyone. I definitely noticed that, you know, while my downstrokes and upstrokes, I don't really have a problem with that. I feel like that at this point is a pretty well-oiled machine. My sense of phrasing when I'm improvising, it has to adapt quite a bit to fit this new time signature. Just wrapping up phrases concisely and hitting those target notes at their appropriate, like, melodic spots can be kind of challenging when you're not used to it. Okay, so before we dive into the solo, let's slow it down to about 70%, and then we'll pick it apart. Let's break this solo apart. Now, I'm going to be talking about phrases in this, but when I say phrases, I'm not necessarily talking about melodic segments. Instead, I'm going to refer to like specific measure chunks. So I'm going to break this into like 1, 2, maybe 3 measure units, and we're going to talk about it that way, okay? So, starting this off, measures 1 and 2 sound like this. Okay, should come as no surprise if you've seen any of the other videos that he's going to start on the and of 1, almost an entire measure before the actual melody is set to begin. Okay, he does this a lot in almost all of his solos, and in fact, you know, I think just about every other solo we've talked about has done that exact same thing, right? That means that first note's going to be an upstroke, okay? My disclaimer right here is I'm not 100% certain that I've got every single note within that lick 100% correct. When you slow this down, and again, I was trying to figure out, is it capo 2 or is it open D? Which one is it? I was trying to figure that out. When I was listening to it, I was getting mixed signals from the not the transcription, but from slowing down the solo, because there were some notes that sounded like ghosted doubles. There were some notes that rang like they were open strings, but then other notes that's not possible, things like that, okay? I really think function is the priority here as opposed to accuracy within the context of this lick. Okay, the purpose of this lick is to introduce the solo, and it's to guide the listener's ear to that very first melodic note. And I think he does a very awesome job of getting to that C. I think the function of that works for that just fine. Okay, so those notes that I'm hearing are F sharp to G, A, B, C, D, D sharp, E, G, A, G, C. Cool. Continuing on, this is measures 3 and 4. Measures 3 and 4 are a very fluid transition between ideas, right? He's just taking this melodic segment and going with it. And I think my hat's off to Tony for this, because in 3/4, again, I feel a little bit more clunky in my own improvisation. So here's measures 3 and 4. Those notes are C, A, C, D. He's going to slide up to the fifth fret of the B string. Okay, he's going to slide into 3rd position. This is the only time he's going to be in 3rd position for this entire solo. The rest of it's going to be in 1st position. He's going to catch a high G with that first finger on the E string on that 3rd fret. Now this note is the first time he introduces some syncopation, because this happens on the and of 3 and it carries over to the downbeat of the next measure. So this is really kind of like a displaced quarter note, if that makes sense. Okay, so adding a little syncopation, now he's going to play A, pull it back off to that G. That 2nd finger is going to drop over to the 4th fret of the next string down to catch that D sharp, can't talk. Okay, catch an open E, that's going to give you a chance to transition back to 1st position to land on C. This is the lick that told me that we are indeed capoed on the 2nd fret and playing out of the C position. I slowed it way down. I listened to every single note individually. When I got to that real F sharp or that capo 2E, when I got to that note, it rang in such a way that I was like, man, there's the only way to really make that ring like that is if it's a capoed note, at least for me. Okay. Up until that point, I've been trying to do it out of open D. It was a little bit wonky. When I put the capo on, after I kind of figured that out, everything seemed much more organic, right? All that to say, I think I just stumbled on a brand new practicing technique. Man, how cool is it to just take a solo that you know is capoed and to play it out of a different position, maybe out of a different like key shape or key center. I feel like that would be really good to really just kind of stretch what you can do on the guitar. So more on that later. Cool, so the first 2 phrases. Just like that. He's following the melody, he's really outlining that melody. This is what I hear for the melody. Okay, really focusing on that C major arpeggio, that C, E, G. Well, he's doing that, but he's just displaced it by an octave, added a couple of transition notes, a little syncopation. Right, that's kind of if I was going to try to follow the melodic phrasing a little bit closely. I think he does a really cool job there. Okay, moving on. Measures 5 and 6, okay? Nothing too crazy here. Oops. Nothing too crazy here, just a little bit more syncopation. So those notes are A, G, C, a hammer on from G to A, then another C, 8th rest, first one we've seen so far, G, again we've got another kind of a syncopation, displaced quarter note kind of thing going on. He's going to play another G, B flat, A, G, okay? Down ups can get kind of wonky here, so I'm a big advocate for the downbeats or downstrokes, upbeats or upstrokes kind of thing. And if you're going to follow that, this is what it would be. It would be down, up, 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 down. Or option, you can slide back on that B flat. So down, down. Okay. Cool. Now we're starting to transition. We're starting to guide the listener's ear to a G chord, because up until that point we've been playing over a C chord. Capo terms, right? Cool. And in this next section, okay, so now we're talking about measures 7 and 8. He's going to employ a technique that he likes to do in other solos. He does this a lot on lower strings, we'll notice, where he puts his first finger down on the first fret. He'll pull off, and he'll land 3rd finger on the next string down, or some kind of like approximation of that. He's going to employ that here. So this is that next phrase. Okay, really outlining G, G7 kind of sound. Those notes are G, E flat, pull off, down to D, so that's what I was talking about. And instead of going down, he kind of breaks the pattern just a little bit. He's going to catch another G, A sharp, 1st fret, right? B, D, E natural this time, okay, so not the E flat that we had before, but E natural, G, D, E, G, F natural. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in here. He adds a lot of chromaticism. He takes a little teeny melodic segment, he displaces it, kind of plays it a little syncopated, and then lands on that F natural. That F natural is very important for guiding the listener's ear back to C major land. Tony's really good about anticipating chord changes, and that's what we're seeing right here. Okay? Up until this point, let's play it, put it in context. so now we're at the halfway point on the phrase. He doesn't really do anything with his fingers, but he's going to fill this measure out with a chord. Okay, so he's already got his third finger down on the third fret on the D string for that F natural. Cool. He's going to play a G dominant 7 chord that's going to lead the listener back to C. How he does that is he's going to take his first finger and put it on that first fret on the E string for that other F natural. Try not to do anything rude with your middle finger here. And you're just going to play from the from the fourth string up to the first string. That sound right there. Cool. I think that's a really cool sound. It helps me if you strike those notes fast but shallow, like I'm not putting a whole lot of meat into it. I feel like if you put too much meat in it, it makes it kind of ring in a certain way and it really emphasizes those notes. I really don't want to emphasize that top F. I think those higher pitches are easier for your ear to hear anyway in the context of a chord, so I'm just going to kind of gloss over those strings. I'm going to just strike it fast and shallow, and that to me kind of provides a really nice just kind of accompanying sound to what's going on there. Cool. Now let's transition back down to C. So this is measure 9.5-ish and measure 10. Okay, so sorry. Here it is. That lick right there. Yeah, it's tough to do stuff out of context. Okay, so we're going to start on an upstroke on this A. I'm going to pull off to G. I'm going to catch an E. Then in measure 10, I'm going to start on a G. Here's that thing again. E flat down to D, C. This is a really cool lick. It's a really good filler lick. Okay, and now we're setting up the second half of the phrase. Okay, so for the second half of the phrase, Tony, I feel like really employs the kind of like the KISS mantra for improvising, keep it simple, stupid. At least that's what me and my friends kind of refer to it as when we're soloing, not calling him stupid or anything. What I'm saying is, like, again, we're in 3/4 and it's really tricky, and I feel like I just really need to simplify things down when I'm trying to improvise. You know, how many of us would much rather hear a very simple song done well as opposed to something that's really complex done kind of poorly or sloppily or something like that. Okay, so he really simplifies things down with the second half. Let's take a look at measure 11. Okay, so nothing too crazy there. Measure 12. He just kind of does this hammer-on eighth note thing plus some quarter notes filler chords. So 11 and 12. Now he's going to break up this pattern with a little bit more eighth notes. He's taking really the same pitches in that pentatonic set, and then he's just transitioning downward. So this is the very end of measure 12 into measure 13. Oh, sorry. So C, A, G, that's a pull off, E, D, C. Again, out of context is wonky. So let's start right here at measure 11. Nothing too wonky there. Check the transcription notes right there. I do want to talk about this last lick at the very end that leads us to this F shape here. Cool. Again, like I said, the second half, I don't think there's anything in there that's going to trip you up. So, yeah. All right, so this last lick. Sorry. That's just cool. All right, he's really guiding the listener's ear to this F shape right here. And how he does that is he lands on that B flat. He's really kind of employing a guide tone arpeggio or a modified guide tone arpeggio. Okay, so what I mean by that is, when you study jazz, you're learning about some of these chord harmonies, and you learn that kind of the most important notes, or I guess the notes that telegraph the most information to someone's ear, is the third chord, or the third note in a chord or scale, and the seventh note in the scale. Those are those two like really important stuff. They convey the most information about the chord quality and about what it's leading to. Okay, so and a guide tone arpeggio. So we call those guide tones, scale degree 3 and scale degree 7. And guide tones very often in a lot of chord progressions link to each other almost chromatically, either like a half step up or a half step down from one chord to the next. Okay, I'll show you what I'm talking about here in an example. But for the purposes of this, a guide tone arpeggio is scale degree 3, 5, 1, 7. Okay, so it's not a normal arpeggio 1 3 5 or 1 3 5 7. It's 3 5 1 7. Okay, so for C major, if I pick those notes and make a guide tone arpeggio in C major, I'm going to have C for scale degree 3, G scale degree 5, C. Okay, so that's scale degree 1. Okay, and I said C major, but I really mean C dominant 7 because remember we're trying to go back to F natural because his is the last break that leads you to that last chorus. So that dominant 7 sound or that flat 7 is a B flat. Okay, now the reason this works so well to guide your ear, and this is what I was talking about before when we were talking about G major back to C, is that scale degree 7 is such a powerful note because we're already going down, right? We went from C down. Okay, we're already going down. We're just going to continue going down by 1/2 step, and that's going to land on an A. In an F chord, A is scale degree 3, or one of F's guide tones that telegraphs one of the most information, right? Cool, so that's why that works, is it's a chromatic, the guide tone in the C dominant 7 chord, that B flat, is a 1/2 step away from that guide tone in F major that telegraphs the quality of that F major chord, right? That's why those 7th notes carry so much weight and they create so much tension and guide your ear, right? So when we were talking about before, okay, those F naturals, right? We're going down, we're going to C after that. They're a 1/2 step above E's, right? E is scale degree 3 in C major chord, and again, scale degree 3 is one of those guide tones that conveys a lot of information about the quality of that chord. Okay, so that's kind of why that works. And so he's guiding the ear. He's got the last say that pushes us into the last chorus that starts on that F, and he chooses to finish it out by leading your ear in a very strong way from C to F. Cool. So when I said this guide tone arpeggio, he's doing kind of a modified one where he adds just a little bit of chromaticism. Just changes the rhythm. All those notes are there, especially that last B flat. Cool. All right, so that's why that works. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, I don't think that there's anything too tricky in the second half of this solo. I think the second half of the solo, he does a really nice job, again, of bringing it back home, easy for the listener to hear. He changes the what's the word, the texture here by using a lot of double stops and things like that. So that whole solo. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. Hopefully this made sense. I'll also include a picture of my transcription notes there and why they make sense. If some of the music theory stuff doesn't quite register, that's cool, that's fine, and I'm happy to point you in the right direction for those resources as well. So yeah.
My darling pony is gone.